is Growth Track, step number 2. We are glad you're back. And if you're actually just joining us for the first time and you missed session 1, you can catch session 1 the next time around. So don't worry, you're welcome to be in session 2, even if you didn't get session 1 last time. And for those of you who did, again, we're glad that you are back. So this is an exciting session because it's when we talk about our personal gifts. We all love to talk about ourselves, don't we? We all love to learn more about ourselves and how we can grow and how we can make ourselves better. And that is not a bad thing. That's a great thing. And we want to also take a look at and see how we're wired, how we're built, and how God can use us, and how we can be of use and just a blessing to others. So let's start. Number 1, this is about my gifts and passions. My gifts and passions. Again, we're all different. Romans 12 verses 6 to 8 talks about all of us have been given different graces. We've all been given different things that we can use for God's glory. Secondly,
the second thing that we want to add to this is our life experience. Our gifts and passions definitely have a part to play, but also our life experience. Where you grew up, your environment, the environment that you're in now, it all comes... that adds into your personality and how you live your life and your outlook on life. And so we want to talk a little bit about that as well.
And then thirdly, your pain. The things that you have experienced that have been painful for you, often those are really impactful experiences and moments. And we learn a lot through our pain. And pain teaches us to empathize with others. And often it is our pain and the things that we've gone through that were difficult that grow us and also help us to reach out to others in similar situations.
Psalms 139, verse 13 and 14 say that you made all the delicate inner parts of my body. You knit me together in my mother's womb, and we are fearfully and wonderfully made, the Bible says. So there are 3 things that reveal our destiny through our design, the way God created us. And the first one is we want to discover our gifts. The second thing that we want to do is develop our gifts. And the third thing we want to do is use our gifts. And our purpose on the earth is to serve God by serving others.
Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to do that unless you know what's in your hand. Last session, we talked about taking a look at what we have in our hand and how we can use what we've got to be a blessing. And so this is about recognizing what we've got, but it's also about developing what we have, because we don't just have to stay where we are, we can grow. And then we want to be in the process of using that. So we're going to take a personality assessment, and I'm just going to give you some instructions on how to take this personality assessment. So this personality assessment is called the DISC system, D-I-S-C, and each of those letters, D-I-S-C, represent sort of a major personality type. So step 1, this is the way that we're going to do this system. You're going to answer well, it's not a question. You're going to respond to these statements. So under each section, there's four sections, section 1, 2, 3, and 4. You're going to fill in the letters D-I-S-C for each of the personality types, okay? So section 1 is going to measure your D score, your D personality score. So what you're going to do is you're going to read the statement. For example, I am assertive, demanding, and decisive. So you're going to respond to that statement and decide I am never demanding, decisive, or assertive, or I am always, or somewhere in between. So I gave myself a 2. I'm rarely assertive, demanding, or decisive. Someone might disagree with me, but that's the rating I gave myself. So then I read the rest of the statements. There's 5 of them there, and I responded by circling the number that I think fits the statement. Okay, for me. So rarely, sometimes, often, always, never. At the end, once you finish the section, so once you finish section 1, you've read the statements and you've circled and you've responded your number, then you're going to add all your numbers together and just get a sum total. And so your sum of all of the numbers gets written here on the line, and that'll give you a score out of a possible 25 and show how high you rated on the D personality. So you're going to go through, you're going to take a minute right now, you're going to read through, and you're going to put them on here. Once you finish the whole page where you've read the statements and you've responded to them, you're going to see where you line up. So your highest number will be your highest response to a certain personality type. So my highest number out of these 4 sections was the second section, the I in the disc. And I had a 21 out of a possible 25. So my primary personality type is I. And then my secondary personality type was C. So I was a 19 out of a possible 25 for that. So my primary is an I, but I'm an I/C. So there's a description. You'll notice in the following pages, there's paragraphs about what an I is, what a D, S, and C is, and also the 2 combinations. So you'll see what a D/I is or a D/C is. And you can kind of read up about what people with a similar personality type as you, how they kind of function, what's important to them and not. And this description in your booklet also gives you a couple examples of people in the Bible who had probably a similar personality to you.
It's probably, sorry to interrupt, it's probably good to say too here at this point, not to think too much into the questions, sort of go with your gut reaction, sort of what's instinctive to you and not take too long to think about it. Just sort of what's your first initial reaction to the statements to get the best result.
See a chart, and so you'll see a DISC sort of box with arrows. Just to explain, the DISC sort of is explained by understanding that some of us are extroverted, some of us are introverted, some of us are task-driven, some of us are driven by relationships and by people. So if you are a D or an I primarily, these are the extroverted personality types. So that top blank that you can fill in is extrovert, okay? So if you're a D or an I, you are a more extroverted type. You are more outspoken, more forward, probably more loud, more chatty. You are an extroverted type. If you are not an extroverted type, you would primarily be either a C or an S, and that would be the 2 introverted types. And we'll talk a little bit more about the C and the S types. If you are a D or a C type person, then you are more of a task-driven person. Getting things accomplished would be very important to primarily D or C people. And then the I and the S personalities, if you're primarily an I or an S personality, then you are a people person. You are a person who, more than getting things done, is your relationships and your interactions with people are most important to you. Okay, so that's just sort of a really quick summary of what the DISC personalities kind of mean. So let's go just a little bit deeper into what these mean, and we'll start with the D personality.
So if you are a D dominant personality, like Pastor Chris said, you're task-oriented, decisive, organized, outgoing, and maybe outspoken. So sometimes when we're our own personality, sometimes we have to learn to work well with others who may not have the same personality as we do, because God made us all unique and we're all individuals. So here's a few things that we maybe want to check as we work with others, as we serve with others on the team, just so that we can get along and our personalities don't get in the way of progress and what we're trying to do as a church. So, for example, if you are a D personality, you may want to do these things. You might want to listen attentively to others and make sure they are heard. You might want to make sure and support other team members and make sure there's room for that. You might want to invest in personal relationships, balance controlling and domineering tendencies, which Ds can do sometimes just naturally. And also you might want to pay attention to the feelings and desires of others. And that's if you're a D personality.
I think what's really important as we take these personality assessments and we learn about ourselves too, is learning about the personalities of the people that we serve with, the people that we work with. As we take these things, we can be thinking of people in our families, right? Our spouses, our parents, our kids, people that we work closely with, because sometimes it can help us to understand others better when we realize, oh, this person's so outspoken and they're so opinionated and they're so demanding and direct. And for some personalities, that can be really intimidating. But at the same time, when we understand, oh, this is a personality type, this is how this person just normally functions, this is how they're wired, it can help us have grace for people who are very different from us, because sometimes we don't understand why people are the way they are. So as we understand ourselves, we also want to use this as a tool for understanding those that we work closely with.
Yeah. So I personalities are influential. They're witty, outgoing, and people-oriented. And so while you may have those strengths, here's a few things that you may want to focus on as well. So you just basically self-aware and aware of others. Be aware of tasks that need to be accomplished. You will want to balance your emotions, your words, and your actions. If you're an I, you'll want to consider details and facts. And you'll want to slow down your pace for others when necessary. And you'll want to choose thoughtful decision-making over impulsive decision-making if you are an I personality.
So if you're an S personality, S is characterized by steadiness, stability. They're analytical, tend to be less outspoken, a little more team-oriented. And so those are great qualities. And that's the thing we need to remember. All of these personality types are great qualities. And we just want to be aware and kind of balance ourselves out a bit. So if you're an S, you want to maybe try working at taking initiative, not waiting for someone else to do it, not being afraid of rocking the water. You want to practice flexibility, not being too structured and stuck. Approach confrontation constructively. S's have the hardest time probably with confrontation. S's don't like to kind of be out there. They don't like to rock the boat, so to speak. Being direct is something that S's need to work on. Realizing that change can be a good thing, not a bad thing. And considering the goals rather than just getting stuck in the details of this is how we do it and this is why, being lost in the structure, being willing to change the structure because sometimes needs change and we have to adapt. If you're a C personality, you are compliant, competent, task and goal oriented, and introverted. And so while these are great, again, these are great qualities to have, being decisive, cultivating personal relationships, being open to other people's ideas and ways of doing things, not too rigid in our own way of doing things, is really important. Balancing our focus between facts and people is a good thing to do. C's can get lost in detail and lost in tasks and goals and forget about the human side of things. Focusing on doing the right things, not just doing things right, for example, and helping others accomplish their goals instead of being so caught up in our own goals. Those are things that can help C's kind of move forward and get beyond themselves a little bit.
All right, we want to take a spiritual gifts assessment, and that's going to be next. So there's a few steps that we want to take you through so you can do that. So if you can find the page, I believe it's page 13, how to take the spiritual gifts assessment. We're going to talk about a few different steps that will take you through. So step 1, respond to the spiritual gifts assessment, spiritual gift statements on pages 12 to 13 by writing the number that indicates how each statement describes you in the blanks on page 14. So 1 is almost never, 2 is sometimes, 3 is almost always. So you're going to rate yourself. And so allow yourself 5 or 6 minutes to answer all the questions before moving on. Step number 2, add each line on page 14, left to right, and place the total number in the total column. Okay, so you're going to add those numbers up. Step number 3, identify your 3 highest total numbers with the corresponding letter and the spiritual gift it represents listed on the pages following the spiritual gifts assessment. Okay, so you're going to identify those. Step 4, read about your spiritual gifts. And there's some detail about all those spiritual gifts that maybe you'll be reading through and you'll say, that's definitely me, that's not me. And maybe you'll surprise yourself as well as you're reading through some of these descriptions. And I believe there's some characters in the Bible that are in those descriptions too that we can read about, and you can identify with those people as well.
Okay, so again, you're going to be taking a look at those 3 different columns, and you're going to be adding across the page. So number 1, number 25, and number 49 are those 3 different rows that you're responding to. You're going to add those up, and that's going to give you a total, okay? And that is going to be A. So you're going to write down whatever gift that is. Then number 2, and all the way across, that's going to give you the next one. So we'll give you a few minutes right now to just read through those statements and fill in the numbers of whether that's rarely, always, sometimes, and then do the adding, because that'll take a little bit of time. And if you have any questions and you don't really understand after that explanation, just ask the facilitator and they can give you another brief explanation on how to do that. So take a minute now.
Well, we hope that was helpful for you as you were beginning to learn about your different personality traits as well as your spiritual gifts. And we know that it's always helpful to be self-aware, to know how we are wired, but also how other people respond to us and how we can work well with others. So next for us is step 3 of Growth Track, which is developing your leadership. So we look forward to seeing you then. God bless you.